Today on Inside Utah Politics, a big week for LGBTQ advocates on Utah's Capitol Hill. A hate crimes bill unanimously passes committee, and a bill to ban conversion therapy is unveiled. We're breaking down the issues with Equality Utah. And we're now more than halfway through the legislative session. Can you believe it? What are the key issues to keep an eye on? Our panel will weigh in on what to expect in the final 3 weeks.
Time now for Inside Utah Politics.
Good Sunday morning, and thanks so much for joining us for Inside Utah Politics. I'm Glenn Mills. We begin this morning with Troy Williams, Executive Director of Equality Utah. He's here to discuss the big bills his organization is pushing for in the remaining weeks of the session. Troy, welcome back to the show. Glad to have you with us this morning.
It's great to be back. You're dressed so well. I'm feeling a little competitive with you.
Yeah, kind of twinning here a little bit.
It's looking good.
Yeah, all right, Kay. As I just said, a big week for your cause on Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
Let's start with the hate crimes bill.
Yeah.
Background, this has come up and failed year after year.
That's right. We've been working on this legislation for 4 years, and we're so grateful to Senator Thatcher. He has been this intrepid, passionate champion for this issue, and he's pulling lawmakers along with him. So we passed that on Thursday. We passed that out of committee unanimously. That's huge.
That includes senators who have voted no in the past, by the way.
That's correct. Yeah. So we're making the case about hate crimes. People are listening, and they're coming along.
Talk about what this bill does.
So what it does is it enhances penalties for victims who are targeted because of who they are. You know, a hate crime is a bit different from a regular crime because there's two victims. There's the person who's attacked, and then there's the community to which that person belongs. You know, so it's like, for example, if someone were to spray paint a smiley face on a synagogue, that's sort of a misdemeanor vandalism. But if they're going to spray paint a swastika, that's sending a message of terror to the entire Jewish community. Those are two different crimes. But under state law, they're both the same misdemeanor.
What do you think it is? You mentioned, people are coming along, opening up to this. Right. What is it that got to this point where things are starting to turn around? And Senator Thatcher's feeling it's not done yet.
Right,
we should mention that.
Absolutely.
But he's feeling better about it this year than he has in past years. There's no doubt about that.
That's right. Well, when we passed non-discrimination protections for the LGBT community back in 2015, it took us 7 years to get to that point. So sometimes it's about taking lawmakers by the hand and really engaging with them, talking with them, and working them through the issues. And often, if you make a good case, you'll bring people along.
So you alluded to this already. It's not just a class for sexual orientation. There are multiple classes.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's the classic categories that the FBI track for hate crimes: race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, disability, those types of characteristics. And
another big movement this year is we heard the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints say, we are neutral on this. We're not going to oppose it this year.
Absolutely.
I know that brought a lot of frustration in years past.
That has, but again, we've been engaging with the church, and we're really grateful for them and for their engagement with us on that issue.
So, the outlook. We said, again, it's not a done deal. It moves forward to the full Senate now.
Yep.
What I'm hearing is people are pretty confident it's going to pass in the Senate, but they're not quite sure what's going to happen in the House. What do you see the outlook being?
I think we're going to pass the bill this session, all right? And if not, we're going to be back in 2020 and 2021, and we're going to keep doing what it takes to get the legislation passed.
Talk about the need. Sim Gill, the Salt Lake County District Attorney, has been a big advocate of this. He says, right now I don't have the tools I need to prosecute these types of crimes.
Right. So we've had an ostensible hate crime statute on the books for almost 20 years. And in those 20 years, it has yet to convict a single offender. But hate crimes are happening all throughout the state, all throughout the country, and they're on a rise. So it's really important to give prosecutors the tools they need to bring justice to those victims.
Let's move on to the bill that you've also been working on.
That's right.
I did a story on this heading into session on banning conversion therapy in the state of Utah. That was unveiled on Thursday also.
Yep.
Talk about what that bill would do.
That's right. So our bill is a prohibition on the practice of conversion therapy for minors. So conversion therapy is this discredited practice to try to change, alter, fix, repair, or cure a person's sexual orientation.
And what types of impacts were we seeing that have on children?
Yeah, so there was a recent study that just came out last year that showed that when children are subjected to conversion therapy, their rates of depression double, and their attempts at suicide nearly triple. So for us, this is an issue to protect young people from a harmful, fraudulent practice, and also to save lives.
The bill, again, you did a lot of negotiation
Yeah.
to get this to this point.
Yeah.
Again, the church saying, you know, we're taking a neutral stance on this one.
Yeah.
What did it take to get to this point?
Well, you know, we engage so many stakeholders in the LGBT community and also in the religious community, and we actively have engaged the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and we really applaud them. They have reaffirmed their opposition to conversion therapy, and then they also, in addition to saying that they won't oppose the bill, they also offered an affirming and affirming message of love and compassion towards LGBT youth, and we really appreciate that.
One thing I want to hit on as well, talk about who this applies to, state licensed therapists.
Right, exactly. So the bill only prohibits state licensed therapists, and so it's a state regulation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even though the church is saying neutral, you're going to face opposition on this.
Sure.
You know that, and some of it's going to be
LGBT issues with the Utah legislature. You know, it's you know.
I don't have to tell you that, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay. People are going to say, look, the government shouldn't be telling me and my child how to make our decisions.
Yeah.
Your response to that?
Well, I think the state does actually have a vested interest in regulating harmful medical practices. And if we know something is going to harm a child, then we have to intervene.
Okay. You know people who have gone through this before.
Yeah.
You've kind of talked a little bit about the impact, but what did you notice in your friends who experienced this type of
yeah.
practice?
I mean, number one, it's still happening. You know, we are talking to people who are 18, 19, 20 years old who've gone through some form of conversion therapy, and when it inevitably fails, the person going through it blames themselves. They feel like they failed their therapist, perhaps their parents or their church community, and maybe even they feel like they failed God. And that's when the depression kicks in. And we've talked to over 100 people here in Utah who've gone through some form of it, in their ages of 60 and older to as young as 18, and the pattern is very similar.
I want to move on to one last topic, and that is affecting the transgender community here in the state of Utah. Two competing bills. One would prohibit any change on a birth certificate. The other sought to set a statewide standard.
Yeah.
Both are gone.
Yeah.
You see probably, obviously, one as a win, but do you also see it as a loss that the other one's off the table?
Sure. I mean, so changing birth certificates for the transgender community is really essential to their own sense of dignity and their own liberty and freedom, right? To be able to have their identity documents match and affirm their gender is critical for them. And so Representative Nelson introduced a bill that would have banned that completely. And to his credit, you know, he came and met with us and with members of the transgender community. He heard their stories and was moved by it and ultimately pulled that legislation.
We saw the governor speak out against that bill and leadership. It didn't seem to have a huge appetite.
Right.
But why not the other bill as well?
You know, I think
because it faced opposition, obviously.
Yeah,
to be
that Senator Weiler,
well.
Senator Weiler's bill, and so we have so much more work to do to educate lawmakers about the lives of transgender Utahns, and we're going to do it. Again, it takes this investment in energy to sit down with lawmakers, introduce our lives and our families to them, and so that some of the fears that they may have may dissipate.
So in the meantime, we still have this. We don't have a standard,
right? And
it really has depended on geography as to whether it's been granted. So
it's judge roulette. So when a transgender person petitions the court for a gender marker change on their birth certificate, most judges in the state actually grant them. Okay, but there's a few pockets around the state where they're not, because there's some ambiguity in the law. We'd like to see that cleaned up so that every transgender person can change their identity documents to match their gender identity.
Are you satisfied, one, that a bill like Representative Nelson's is off the table for good, and two, that you can get a statewide standard on this issue? We're
going to keep working until we achieve that. I don't think we'll see Representative Nelson's bill surface again. It was just too harsh and would have done a lot of harm to the transgender community. And I don't think that was ever anyone's intent. You know, I just think that we had more education to do in that area.
All right. As always, appreciate having you check in. We will be watching the final weeks on these two bills and see how they play out. Appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
I'll be there. Thanks so much.
Still to come, a controversial abortion bill survives its first public vote at the Capitol. We'll dig into the emotional debate from both sides. Plus, a state lawmaker wants Utah to be a leader in developing the car of the future. The latest on a bill to pave the way for autonomous vehicles in Utah.